Hey everybody, this is Perch, and one of the new Marvel series coming up, Ka-Zar, Lord of the Savage Land, is coming out this September. It's one of our 5-issue limited series, which is all the rage these days. The kids are all doing it. But Ka-Zar is he's done several comics before. This is actually going to be his 6th volume since 1965. Ka-Zar is a legacy character, and arguably a character that has some money in him. I think that will we see a Ka-Zar movie at some point from the MCU? I mean, I think so. I think we're definitely going to have Ka-Zar show up at some point. It's the idea of having this kind of remote jungle wilderness kind of land where dinosaurs are that you can run around and play in was this, before now hidden part of the Marvel universe. It feels like that's a Disney Plus series. That's got Disney Plus written all over it. So feels like that's coming. At any rate, what is up with Ka-Zar? Well, he's dead. Well, no, technically he was dead, and then he came back to life. So if you read last year's Empire, but you might have forgotten about it because, I mean, that was a year ago, and we've had a remarkable amount of events since that time. It's painful to me that we're just getting into summer of 2021. We haven't even hit 1 year since Empire, with a Y, was out in the stores. And that feels like 10 years ago, at least, just in comics time and in everything else. It's funny. It's like comics time goes at about 1 minute, of real life equals 1 second in the comic. Everybody's aging very slowly. But this is kind of the opposite, where we've gone through Ten of Swords, we've gone through King in Black, we've had Heroes Reborn, we've had the Phoenix tournament. I mean, it feels like I know I'm forgetting some multiple Spider-Man events in there. Yikes, tons of events. But anyway, Empire, which came out a little less than a year ago, or 50 years ago, depending on your perspective. During that, Ka-Zar was murdered. And you may not remember that, but the Kotati, let's see, can I pronounce that in a weird-ass way where people will bitch about it in the comments? I don't know. Kotati is what I'm going to go with. Anyway, the aliens murdered Ka-Zar. And then almost, right away, because nobody's even pretending anymore, he was brought back to life in a soul-merging process with Shanna the She-Devil and Brother Voodoo kind of helping out to return him to life. So that was a shock death and a quick rebirth for Ka-Zar. So, again, you might have forgotten that Ka-Zar was briefly dead and that the Kotati, Kotati. Anyway. No, I can't stretch this joke out anymore. Anyway, so he was murdered, and then the Savage Land and Shanna brought him back. Ka-Zar is a hero that goes down. I mean, he's been brought back to life. He's not going to pull a Batman here. Anyway, so he's back to life, and this storyline is going to feature what writer Zach Thompson calls an evolution that channels something like the Immortal Hulk. Or as I like to call it, the Immortal Hulk sold really well. And so let's say that these new books are like the Immortal Hulk, so that people will buy this one as well. That's a little bit too cynical. Anyway, the new Ka-Zar has a vastly new perspective. He is nicknamed Lord Plunder. Anyway, he is back with a vastly new perspective. In theory, maybe something that connects him more to the green and to the plants. I don't know what. He's had a merging of life energies, so he's got a little bit of Shanna in him. I'm not going to do the joke. And he's got new abilities, new needs, and new enemies. And one of those needs is going down on Shanna. No, I'm just kidding. But in theory, we're going to get a more Earth-based or something that's a little bit more connected with the land. And what better time to do it when we've got a bunch of environmental storylines and everything else? I may have this completely wrong, and they've actually given him laser beam eyes or something, but that's how it reads to me. This comic, an ancient evil has surfaced in the Savage Land, one that is rapidly reshaping the Forgotten World and its inhabitants. Ka-Zar and Shanna must fight together to protect their home and family. But their son Matthew has plans of their own. Play his own. Okay, anyway. His own. We're using the proper pronouns. So Zach Thompson is being joined by artist Jermaine Garcia. And so this is, you're seeing some pictures up here. It's a nice, it's a fun looking little book. Looks kind of very distinctive art style, so that's fine. We're bringing Ka-Zar back. I think that they claim this way: it's an absolute dream come true to take a character created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and propel them into the modern Marvel universe with a whole host of horrifying new powers. And this is where his time dead, being killed by the land, and having this new connection, this new spirit kind of stuff, probably indicates that he's got some new plant-based powers to some extent. So sure, why not? It is they're claiming an adventure pulp kind of magazine, that kind of style. Zach Thompson, sure, he can put some things out, so that sounds good. So that's what we've got. Very, very different sequence for Ka-Zar. Now, this opens up a couple questions. So first off, are you interested in this? Meaning, are you excited to see Ka-Zar come back to life? Does he need new powers? Is it? But in general, I think I have a couple thoughts. First off, I don't know how much you could properly do with a 5-issue series. I mean, there will be a story here, and that's fine. And the argument for making a Ka-Zar ongoing series in 2021 is probably a tough one. Get that. But at the same time, Marvel in particular has done this a little bit too much recently, where they kind of introduce a bold new status quo, and they introduce new powers, new backstory, new retcon, new this or that to a character, but the character gets 5 issues in this limited series to really flesh that out. You're left with more questions than answered, and you've got a kind of a almost not a botched kind of rollout, but it's all done very, very quickly. And the end result is the character gets some new kind of nuance to their personality, to their being, but not without a lot of thought behind it. And so the challenge becomes, how do you keep up with all of these changes? And this almost leaves the character in a worse state later than before. And this is not to knock Zach Thompson and kind of the whatever new power status quo, kind of this new immortal kind of aspect to his personality and everything else. It could be a very exciting springboard to do something new. And, Ka-Zar as a character, adding some new depth to his power set and everything else is not a bad idea. But the problem is, number one, it's hooking off a lot of events from Empire, an event that I mentioned before feels like, 5,000 years ago. And, with the constant death and resurrection kind of cycle in the Marvel Universe, doesn't matter anymore. And then on top of that, how many times have we seen characters do this, where we introduce some new wrinkle to them, their limited series comes out, it sells, and then, we don't see the character again for 5 years. And that to me speaks to really the problem where the writers who are coming up in the future are now having to deal with this big baggage of all these new additions to the character's powers and personality and backstory and everything else. And then what do you do with them? It becomes this point where it's just a mess. Jonathan Hickman, when he took over the X-Men, made the comment that there's so much, retconning and changing and other information that it was an unmistakable mess. Now, arguably with what he's done with Krakoa and Plant Rebirth and everything else, he's dumped several more layers of mess onto it. But this is a problem with characters and how they are ongoing. And what eventually happens is that, Disney does take notice and they do a movie of the character and they strip away 95% of all this baggage. And then the comics are left kind of to almost tuck their tail between their legs and, do the same. They kind of devolve the character down. Case in point, Star-Lord is Peter Quill had a bunch of work done with him with the, DNA team of writers. And then the movie comes out. And it's really, the character is kind of stripped down a little bit to some basics. A lot of the personality of Star-Lord had been established by DNA, and that was certainly what they were thinking when they hired Chris Pratt. But the character is a kind of a straightforward adventurer. And so the comics almost kind of revert the character backward. They get rid of some of that complexity that they'd been built up, and they take the character back to the basics so it aligns with the movie. And then a couple of years go by, and they start adding stuff back in again, like that Al Ewing has done with Star-Lord now. And none of this is really going to be reflected in the new movie. So it creates this constant weird disconnect to the character. And even forgetting about the movies, these constant little quick retcons and changes and new powers and everything else, I mean, they don't tend to age well. But that said, yeah, I'm curious to pick up this title, see what they have going on. I do like the kind of simple art style they have going on here. It's the coloring and the rendering looks very nice. It looks different, so I'm interested to see it. But what do you do with a character like Ka-Zar? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course. Let me know if you're picking it up or what you would do in this case. Like how do you grow and evolve these things? And most importantly, as always, thanks for listening.